Hi, me again, coming to you from a different camera angle today. I've plugged my ring light in over in the corner of my room so you can see like out my window and my little bathroom, my little radiator, all that sort of stuff. It's not a green screen video, unlike a lot of certain persons are, but I won't mention any names. So I did a video the other day about this whole thing involving a bent copper from Devon and Cornwall Police. In a nutshell, he kidnapped, I assumed, I delusionally may have believed that he'd kidnapped my sister, Lily Rose Beatrice Allen, dressed her up as a copper, come to my house to come and, I don't know what they were intending on doing, but she seemed pretty distraught on the doorstep. And my CCTV box had been hacked, so I couldn't take the file off using a USB. It just didn't work. I had to try it after about 35 attempts. I managed to get the file off. And then after about a month of sitting on this file and not doing anything with it, the same police officer came to my house, got my brother, I reckon, coerced my brother into making a report about people impersonating me on Facebook. I'd had all my passwords stolen while I'd been at a Signet hospital, and the person had been sending Facebook messages apparently to people asking them for money, posing as me. And although that's a crime, it's not really serious enough to warrant 3 visits to your house. And I wrote a long document with lots of stuff. What happened basically is that he turned up 3 times at my house. One of the times was very suspicious, which we'll see in a minute. And then eventually somebody was screaming really loudly, which I thought was my brother, and I had to flee my home. And I've been homeless ever since 2019. I was sectioned in May 2019, and in the winter I got the file brought into me on a USB stick. I watched it on an OTG on my phone in the ward, in Haytor ward, which is run by NHS England, Devon Partnership Trust. And when I woke up in the morning, the folder had a different file in it. There was a mock-up. The police had gone back to my home, changed the date on the CCTV, and made a mock-up of a file of the deliveries on, I think it was the 19th and the 20th of March, something like that. Anyway, there's this new feature I've just had prompted to me called Generate Audio Overview. So I've done a sort of AI condensed version of what I believe might have happened regarding this copper abducting Lily, then trying to bump me off, then torturing my brother, and then me having to run for the hills and never return to Devon, because Devon and Cornwall Police don't want a massive scandal, neither do the NHS, neither does Signet. And Lily's recording work, you know, she's one of the most influential singers of the 20th century. Her work sells in 280 countries in the world, if there is that many. And there's a few other quite highly controversial elements to the story which they really don't want getting up. You know, what's interesting to the public isn't always in the public interest. You know, I don't know if there's a D notice on it, but there's been a lot of censorship, and they've gone to great lengths to try and sort of suppress this story from the mainstream media and the press, including trying to prosecute me for harassment when I've been trying to stick up for Lily. She's my sister and I care about her, and I think she's lovely, and I forgot about her for a long time because I had a neurological injury, which I'm still trying to get to the bottom of. I just got an email yesterday from the Trust, Torben South Devon NHS Foundation Trust, and the Royal Devon and Exeter. I've put in subject access requests for both of them to find out what happened with my neurological health. I had catatonic memory loss, and after about 5 years I'd forgotten half the people I met in Exeter, including my sister Lily. I just used to think that she was some pop star that was famous, and there's no way we could have met each other. But then I at one point remembered that actually we had met, and that we didn't just meet, we became intimate, and we were brother and sister, half brother and sister, which wasn't quite as weird. It kind of was weird being brother and sister, but we'd only known each other from the age of 16. And I was a chauvinistic, sort of womanising, kind of cesspit of a man at that point. So I can understand why we might have fallen out, probably because of the way I treated her and reacted to her affectionate and buoyant, lovely, bubbly tone and warm and engaging personality, which I now remember like clear as a bell, but I don't remember everything from that time. Anyway, this audio overview thing's pretty cool. Here's an audio overview. So it gets 2 people to talk over your document, and it's a new feature in 2.5 flash Gemini. I think it might be only with Gemini Pro. I've got Gemini Pro subscription. That's why the little star is red rather than blue. But yeah, here's an overview of a document I did a publication on the other day, and a little a little kind of revisit to the original file folder. I'll play you the whole thing. See what you think.
Welcome to the deep dive. You've sent us some source material, and it shares some pretty serious concerns you have. Concerns about alleged police conduct, maybe some sinister motives. So today, we're going to dig into those documents you shared.
Yeah, our job here is really just to unpack the points and the details you've laid out for us. We want to understand your perspective, especially focusing on your concerns about, well, a specific officer, PC Dudley.
Right, and these repeated visits to your home, and how you see these events connecting back to your brother, Connor McLeod, and even potentially organized crime. That's all in your account.
Exactly. We're just aiming to guide you through the narrative, the fears, as you've described them in the material, laying it out just as it appears there.
Okay, let's jump right in then. Your material starts with this core concern. It's your belief that your brother, Connor McLeod, you believe he was coerced, essentially forced, into making a police report.
Right, about something described as a genuinely stolen social media password. Seems minor on the surface. But the document you shared argues this incident was wildly blown out of proportion.
Okay.
And that it was used maybe as an unjustified excuse for police to keep visiting, and PC Dudley is mentioned specifically here.
Yeah, and building on that, your document really stresses the frequency, how often this happened. It says PC Dudley made, 3 successive trips?
Sir, yes.
For something your source calls trivial nature, and your account states, this feels entirely disproportionate, basically inexplicable under normal procedures, you think, which you state intensely fuels my suspicion of hidden motives. It makes sense why you'd feel that way based on that description.
And then there are these specific details around the visits, things you felt created vulnerability, maybe concealed something. Your material mentions one visit where there were loud gardeners using strummers.
Right outside, yeah.
Coincidentally, right. Positioned directly outside. Creating what your source calls an acoustic mask.
Like to block out sound.
Essentially, yeah. A cover for any sounds. Your document even says the chance of this timing is statistically negligible.
Right.
Really unlikely.
Wow. Okay. And then another really critical point in your account is the home CCTV.
Ah, yes.
Your source claims it went offline, stopped working, less than 5 minutes before PC Dudley's vehicle pulled up.
Again, the document calls the probability of a working system just failing right then.
Yeah.
Also statistically negligible.
So you see this failure not as random, but as, quote, a calculated and coordinated effort to remove my ability to record. That definitely adds to the fear.
And connecting those dots, the alleged coerced report, the visits you felt were disproportionate, these strange incidents like the gardeners and the CCTV, well, your source explains the impact. It says these things together generated a profound and rational fear of sinister or ulterior motives.
Leading you to feel, as you put it, intensely vulnerable and targeted, and even fearing potential attempts on my life. That's a very serious place to be.
Absolutely. Then the material moves to a section called Tacit Admission and Link to Organized Crime. It describes an interaction you had. You apparently told PC Dudley that your brother, Connor McLeod, was being held against his will by organized criminals.
And PC Dudley's response, quoted in your document, was, right. I just want to make sure we've got the right brother.
Now, your source interprets that very specifically, not just as, checking the details.
No, how so?
It's seen as a tacit admission, like an unspoken confession of his own involvement with these criminals. The document strongly suggests police actions you experienced are linked to the abuse and coercion of your brother.
Part of a larger coordinated criminal enterprise. That's the claim.
Yes, alleging police were actively participating in or facilitating it, according to your documents.
Okay, and just to reiterate for everyone, especially for you listening, everything we've discussed, it comes straight from the source material you provided.
Exactly.
Our goal was just to lay out your perspective, your concerns, precisely as they're written down in that document you sent.
We're trying to understand the narrative presented in your material.
Right, so just to quickly recap the core concerns from your source. That initial pretext, the minor crime report. Then the pattern of visits by PC Dudley you felt were disproportionate.
The gardeners, the CCTV, those specific incidents creating vulnerability.
And the resulting fear, which you described as profound And finally, your interpretation of that comment from PC Dudley.
Linking police actions directly to organized crime and your brother, Connor McLeod.
Yeah.
So this deep dive, it was really about presenting that narrative, those concerns, exactly as you detailed them for us in your sources.
And maybe here's a final thought for you to mull over, drawing from the account you've shared.
Yeah.
How much does our perception of whether things happen by random chance or by intentional design, how much does that shape our whole understanding of the events unfolding around us?
So, I'll take you through loads of stuff you don't need to see. Camera is what I'm after. There we go. So, did the police kidnap my sister? Did they come back and try and bump me off with an excuse that they were there to investigate my stolen Facebook password 3 times in a row? Did they then torture my brother, and was I then subject to a collaboration between mental health services and the police to replace the files featuring Lily Allen dressed as a copper and diffuse the narrative of the evidential thing? Are the police involved? Are the NHS involved? Are Signet involved? Or am I looking at things, a bit too deeply? Am I being a bit paranoid? Who knows? Have a look at my previous videos and you can check out for yourself and make up your own mind about those things. Connor's birthday is on Monday. Going to be going to see him and really looking forward to that. I wish my mum was still here so that we could celebrate with my mum. She used to dote on Connor for his birthday, and for anybody who is not going to be having a birthday with their loved one this year, you've got my deepest respects, condolences, and without any prejudice, my empathy, because I know what it's like to miss somebody on your birthday and on their birthday. I got transferred from a hospital in Warrington to I got transferred on my mum's birthday. It was almost like a sort of from the mental health services. They waited until the 21st of July, which will have been my mum Alethia's birthday, to transfer me from one hospital to another. That's just a coincidence, probably, but maybe not, They didn't have my hospital records. I was at the BRI under a section. They didn't have my hospital records, and I'd been to a locum GP a few weeks before with some weird sort of feelings in my kidneys, and he'd said, "Mate, you're not going to believe this, but we can't access any of your records going back beyond the beginning of 2023. There's just nothing here." He was sat in a hospital. He was a locum GP I got from 111, but he was at a hospital in Kingswood. I can't remember what it's called, but it's a big hospital around the corner from Talbot Avenue, not far away at all, walking distance. And he sat there on the hospital computer and just said, I can't tell if you've got a metal plate in your head, leukemia, Crohn's disease, hyperglycemia, anaphylaxis. I just don't know anything about your medical history. All it's got here is some files going back to the beginning of 2023. So this CrowdStrike thing that happened on the same day that Lily flew to America, there was 16,000 flights were downed. The New York Stock Exchange and the London Stock Exchange had problems. Sort of payment terminals all over the world stopped. They said it was the biggest cybercrime in the history of the human race. It was as big as what they were expecting the Millennium Bug to be. That was on the 19th of July, if I remember correctly. If a solicitor or a journalist or a police officer had turned up to the hospital and I'd said, I've been sectioned, but I don't have any medical legal scrutiny, and they don't have my section, they don't have any of my medical records. Obviously the NHS doesn't have a delete function for medical records. And on the same day, Lily tweeted to British Airways to say that she'd missed her flight, and it sort of created this plausible juncture for a kind of like an open allusion to something which they wouldn't be alluding to were they not going to do it. But I think that actually she never got that flight and remained somewhere else for a few months, and a lot of them were Photoshop green screen, just like the green behind here. That's why they've deleted all of her Instagram posts, because it's obvious that some of them are green screened and that actually she was at a completely different location. She wasn't on holiday in British Columbia. She was at different places. I have to be careful what I put on social media, and I I don't want to allege or accuse any one person or party of being involved. These are just my perceptions, and if you think they're delusional, then that's up to you. But yeah, that was quite a big. It would have been a massive scandal if they hadn't have got rid of my medical records. Like if they had come to the ward at that time and they said they couldn't find their medical records, the NHS record system was down following the CrowdStrike outage, and it also created a plausible narrative for flights to be delayed. And so at that same point that I was going to be taken to hospital, Lil was then supposedly taken to on a British Airways flight, which was delayed back to Brooklyn, where she lives. But they'd used those two locations to create plausible counter narratives, and then they photoshopped loads of images of her in different locations, trying to posit that she's not facing sort of derision or abuse or subjugation or detention at different location by different organised criminals, and that she's just having a nice, fine and dandy life. But I shouldn't bang on about it too much, otherwise they'll have me up on Section 4A of the Protection from Harassment Act. These aren't aimed to harass or accuse anybody. I'm just actually presenting some fairly important and valid evidence and an evidential narrative which should not be ignored by the security services and the police. I'm not the one doing the harassing or harassment or defamation or libel or slander. I am the one who's on your side, trying to get the evidence out to you so that you can solve the crime of the century and catch some of the most dangerous and revolting criminals in the Western world, who are incredibly well resourced since they've the death of my parents and the extremely large sequestering of capital which took place shortly after that. But the less we think about that, the better. All the best. Thanks for watching, and yeah, check out the new overview feature on Gemini. It's pretty dope.